Coming up on this episode.
Being former Marines, I think, or former military in general, I think those employees are the ones that have more initiative, from what I see too.
Close all three everything's for a reason.
And if you were in the Marine Corps, chances are you are a expert with a mop.
Low pass, show of force confirmed at the enemy.
Outside the wire.
Oscar 1, guns good.
Outside the Wire, episode 5. Welcome. Thank you for listening or watching. We are going to continue our last conversation talking about transitioning from the military to a civilian career. And we have Chad, Greg, and Tian with us today again. And Chad, why don't you go ahead and start off when you are first getting started and you're writing a resume. Why don't you give them your perspective and your unique experience with having to hire these fools?
All right, so let's talk about resumes for a minute. So to backtrack, again, my career, I'm in law enforcement now, and we do it's paramilitary. You guys, most of you in the military, you know about a meritorious, promotion, right? You remember going in front of the 6 sergeant majors that were standing there in the one seat, and they made
again the one upper. I've never been meritorious.
Well, you know about it. You've seen them out there marching around and stuff like that. Get out of here.
I'm in reserves. I don't know shit.
Okay, fair enough. Well, screw you both. Anyway, some people can relate to this, okay? Not everybody, but some people can.
For the rest of you normal human beings, you can just tune out right now. This is for meritorious promotees only.
No, I was just trying to paint a picture.
Okay, sorry.
And then now, so in law enforcement, you have an oral board, not an interview. I can't stand the people like, oh, I'm coming in for an interview. It's an oral board. You're sitting in front of generally, a chief of police or a higher, a lieutenant or a captain, and then like a corporal or a sergeant. Like, they're there. And you sit in this chair on the other side of the table, and you got to sell yourself, right? And some things that we look at right off the bat is like, they're right.
Look at his face. He's thinking about right now the last time he had to sell himself.
How would I sell myself, and how much would I sell?
We have selected questions.
What are you?
How
What
many
are you worth?
snowboards can I buy?
Right, that would not get you hired.
Damn it!
It might somewhere. But
You have failed this oral board process.
there's generally like a question like along the lines like, tell us about yourself, right? So that's a point to sell yourself, right? Now, let me back up to dress. How do you think you should go into an oral board for a police department?
Well, I like when, as far as like going into boot camp for the Marine Corps, showing up already with Marine Corps tattoos. So if I was going to show up, I would probably be already dressed like a police officer. Acting as if I already had the job.
I'm not saying I haven't seen that, because I have seen that.
Wasn't that your favorite? I remember being in boot camp and be like, look at this motherfucker. He already thinks he's a Marine, showing up with a USMC tattoo across his chest.
When I worked for Las Vegas, okay, it was like 600 people going into this testing process, and it's just our first. Some tests are written, and then they go on to the PT, and then they do an oral board after that. But this kid comes in and he's wearing a shirt, like the bachelor shirts that they wear, like the t-shirt, and looks like a tuxedo.
Oh, no way!
No. This was a police uniform, and he was wearing that, serious can be. He goes and sits down at the table.
Oh, I thought
to
he was
take
wearing a
the test.
tuxedo t-shirt.
No, he was wearing a police uniform
T-shirt.
Oh,
Which
that's
is even better.
funner.
the tie and like the badge and the whole
That's
nine.
amazing.
That is it. Tell me he got it. Please tell me he got it.
No, he didn't.
Damn it.
So
I feel like I would want that guy.
I know. I almost feel like. Okay.
really, why would you want that guy?
I don't know, because so here's again, when we talk about the difference between the military and the civilian sector, when, as far as when I was corporal, sergeant, when I was I observed the strangest things when it came into the military. Like, you look at the guys that you think by appearance, by their PT score, their rifle score, whatever, and you think like, oh, on paper, this guy is going to be shit hot in combat. And that's the guy who's in the back seat of the Humvee crying when the bullets start hitting the hood. And the guy who was quiet, reserved, and didn't necessarily like be outgoing, he's up there making that machine gun sing. And he's kind of quirky and a nerd, and you're like, oh, wow, look at this guy.
The Garrison
Yeah.
versus Field Marine.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess for me, what I learned being in the military is like,
Don't judge a book by its cover.
yeah, like the guys who you least expected are legit Rambo inside. And I'm like, go Rambo, you do your thing.
I can get that, but in like.
But I totally understand what you're saying. As far as what you're saying basically is
This guy's a
your
complete dipshit.
yeah, what you're saying is your appearance, your presentation, how you're presenting yourself is your first
impression.
Yeah.
They're everything.
And
right?
you only get one first impression.
Right.
And so if you're applying for a job,
Right.
you need to be, it would behoove you.
Oh God, why?
What, you didn't like that?
Oh,
Hey.
I love that word. It's favorite word. in
He
the
didn't
book.
even flinch. You know he used that word all the time.
I know.
No, I've never seen someone get so upset with it.
I almost made it out as a lance corporal, but they made me corporal.
You wanted to be terminal land.
Goals. Good
Yes,
for you.
you were striving for perfection.
Yeah.
Yeah, so continue.
It's hard to follow this. So, all right. First impressions are everything, and especially in law enforcement. I mean, when you were a boot going to your first duty station, I think you would have got messed with pretty bad if you came in there being a hot mess.
Wearing a
Even though
t-shirt
you already
with
got-
my
yeah,
with my service
yeah,
Charlie.
you got messed with anyway. It was coming regardless.
Yeah.
But, right. So in law enforcement, we look for the same thing, right? Because when I expect that officer to get out of that car, security guard, impression's everything, right? Now there's the guy that gets out and he's like, pay attention to my badge, or there's the guy that gets out and you're like, ooh, I don't want to mess with him. He looks like he, could chase me and catch
Right.
me. So I've seen the gambit with people that have come in from, typically you want to dress for success. That's the way I look at it, right? And doing that, the easiest way to do that is dressing in a suit, right? 3-piece suit. Now, do you want to dress in a tux like on that show Brothers? No.
I'm wearing my '80s prom.
You probably.
I'm having the
funny as
ruffled.
that would be, right?
Oh, Don John the White's the
Right. It's,
Hey, how about Don? Yeah, Don
Johnson.
Johnson. Yeah, I like it.
Absolutely.
I'm showing up with a
Or
pink.
modern day Jorge Masvidal with the red.
Very nice. I like these movie references.
Now let's look into also you might not have the money for a high-end suit either, right? So you got to kind of dress for the job that you're going for too, and I think that plays into it. Like you wouldn't go into Google dressed in that because aren't they more of a fun place from what I understand? Like they want easy going, that probably be a polo shirt and shorts, right?
I feel like you would show up to.
dress to conform with their culture.
Right, so you should.
Well, if
maybe
you
do
show up to
your
Google
research.
wearing flip flops and an ironic T-shirt.
What I find even in law enforcement, people throw their resume and cover letter at the wall and go, okay, I'm going to go for 20 agencies and see which ones stick. Well, generally the next question you'll be asked on an oral board is, tell us about the town and why you want to work here.
Yeah.
And when you can't tell me anything and you haven't taken the time to learn anything about the town, the rank structure or anything, or I'll have the chief of police sitting right beside me and I'll go, who's the chief of police?
Oh.
And there's obviously a nervousness there, but they didn't do anything they could to learn the area because their heart's not there, right?
Yeah.
You want to show that you want that position, right? Right. So dressing for success, and especially security work, law enforcement work, I suggest coming in suit, at least a shirt and tie and slacks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You might not have the money to go out and buy that awesome suit, but if you can, that's that.
It's gonna set you.
Yeah, it's gonna set you up.
Yeah.
So all right, your cover letter, right? Cover letter generally is hey, why do I would like an opportunity to work for this agency, and this is why. Da, 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 da. Well, I suggest when you do that, you don't make sure that you proofread it, make sure that you check it. Make sure it's not for another job that you just recently applied for because you just got it on your computer and you're just going to hit print and just start throwing them all out there.
Right.
Because when you come into my oral board, I'm going to
listening?
Oh, I'm listening.
Okay.
I'm gonna call you out on that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be like, so this says you want to be a forklift driver. Is that the job you're applying for?
Yeah.
Are you in the right place?
You went down the wrong hallway, son. Yeah, no, I totally get that. Yeah, I think it's really good advice. It sounds like common sense, but obviously you're bringing it up, which means people have done these things, not even remotely considering. Like, it's just, I think it's great to have your perspective as someone who is hiring someone, what your expectations are. Like, you're going to be working for me. You're going to be following the orders that I'm giving you. You're going to be representing this department on a day-to-day basis. You know, the town is going to see you. The city's going to see you. Your face is out there. And if you're showing up on day one, because I would look at your oral board or interview as day one of that job and go in there like you are already in that position, acting as if you are now part of that team, and present yourself in a manner of, here I am, here's who I am, and I already have taken steps to determine what you are going to expect of me, and here is me meeting those expectations, basically.
Right, exactly. You know, you go in there, get eye contact with the people you're talking to. You don't want to be sitting there looking around or staring straight or turning. There's obviously a natural nervousness to what we're doing, right? Any interview going, right? Because you're trying to sell yourself. You want to you want to go in there with a level of confidence, right? But you don't want to go in there with so much confidence that you're like, hey, I'm the man, and I've got this. I mean, there's a time and place for that, but we're also looking at you being a humble person too, right?
Right, yeah.
And
well, I think, and like, I was going to talk about this eventually anyway, but I think there is a big difference on perception, subtle differences between arrogance and confidence in your mind, but the perception of the difference between arrogance and confidence is huge, I think, especially when you're looking to hire someone. You definitely want someone who is confident in themselves and in their abilities, but arrogance, it comes across as like, okay, well, I can identify right away that this guy thinks he already knows and he's not teachable. And I think that's, you know, if you come into a position and that's your first perception that you're giving someone is, I'm arrogant, you're kind of shooting yourself.
Attitude is always looked on on a more higher basis than talent for the most part. Because attitude can be you can be a negative impact on the entire on your entire team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, I've heard this so many times from people who are hiring for positions, and you know, especially in like trades. You know, I hear people who are, you know, electricians, they own electrical company, or they're a plumber and they're looking to hire other plumbers. They're like, I don't care if you know how to be an electrician. I can teach you that. I don't care if you know what a fitting for, you know, this kind of plumbing or that kind of plumbing. I don't care if you know that stuff. I can teach you that. Yeah. What I can't teach you is character qualities and attitude.
Is do you fit in our team?
Yeah.
Is that in our established team of these working gears, and if you're an off-size gear, you know, that don't fit, you know,
you're screwing everything up.
And they might fit somewhere else. They might, you know, that might happen. But the thing that I'm looking at is I'm looking at someone that I want confidence, right? Because I got to know, like in our job, can they go out and tell somebody what needs to be done, right? Because there is a leadership aspect to that, right? We can teach them how to shoot. We can teach them how to get out of the car. I can teach them how to write a ticket, you know. But can I teach them humility? Can I? No, that's a trait. That's all on your own. How about common sense? Like, you know, if you know, discretion. You know.
Here we go. Rattle them off. JJ did tie buckle.
Did he?
But did he actually tie buckle?
I don't know.
I don't know if he actually did.
Well, my name's not JJ, so
you know.
Sir.
Listen here, sir. I don't. This recruit is not JJ.
You're going in for the job in that area. Know that area. know those people. And this is any job. I mean, this is like 101. It doesn't matter what you're going for.
Right, yeah.
If you're going into graphics design and you're talking about being a car mechanic, how can that relate, right?
Right.
Being a grunt and coming out and trying to fit in as a banker, it's
Well, one of the things I wanted to like touch on a little bit too, and like this just kind of like popped into my head thinking about like the difference between mentality of having a job and doing what you are told, or going in for a career. And I think that there's a difference when you talk about attitude and you talk about like your presentation. I think you can kind of fake attitude, or you can be genuine, and it can come from a place of like real. And I think the difference between faking something is if you don't actually want to be a police officer,
why are you there?
Then you're faking it. You can fake the attitude all you want, but if you know in your heart, like I can't get out of my head. This is all I want to do is be a cop. Like this is where I want to be. Then you should definitely, obviously work on these presentation of yourself and refine your presentation, but it's going to be easier to present yourself in the right light. But if you're showing up and you're like, all I really want to do is get a paycheck, and I'm not really here to apply myself. I'm not really here to advance and learn a new skill.
There are easier jobs than being a police officer.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the last podcast. Kinko's is
even becoming a Marine, right? It's not for everybody.
No.
Right? And you've seen guys in our career that you're like, how are you even surviving?
Right. Well, and they talk about that. I've been amazed how many times where, when we found out our unit was deploying, and then you get that face like you did join the Marine Corps, right? Like you understood what the Marine Corps does. Same thing with like police department. You're like, you kind of did some research, right? Before you showed up in my office with your application, like you know what cops do, you know what the job is. And I think it's crazy to me that people would show up without having given an actual like real thought. So
wouldn't the academy weed those folks out?
Well, I mean, it's up to us. I mean, you go through an oral board, you go through an extensive background. That's all before you even get to the academy, right?
But let's say the
academy is there to train you.
Are there people that's halfway through the academy and realize, you know what, maybe this is not for me?
Absolutely. And I've seen service members that realize, like, I don't want to get yelled at like this anymore. Like, see ya, peace, I'm out.
My recruiter, he became a police officer, and at one point, I mean, he was a staff sergeant. He was like, I don't need this. He's like, that was
very difficult. Even
it was. It's
not
very.
When I got out, I actually applied for the U.S. Marshals, and my battalion commander wrote me like an awesome letter of recommendation. My battalion commander's gunner, and so I was in his truck all the time, and I got to know the guy.
I'm an
operator. Yeah. I try not to name drop, but yes.
I'm with the battalion commander.
But the interesting thing was, like, again, I didn't research, but I went in there very honest. And I think, sometimes you can't go in there and like learn what the entire job is, but you can be very honest about what you think your strengths are, what your expectations are, and like you said, let the natural weed out process happen. So like the Marshals Service told me right off the bat, they're like, based on your career in the military, we would love to have you, but you don't have a college education, and you are going to be at a disadvantage right off the bat because you are not promotable past a certain point without that degree. And he's like, and if you start right now, it's going to be hard to get your degree while you're working full time. And the best I can do is once you start, I mean, we could start you tomorrow, and you would be sitting in a courtroom providing security and you'd just be, walking, plaintiffs back and forth between the jail cell and the courtroom, and that's basically where you are. It's like, and I can tell by your attitude, I can tell by what you've done, what you've already experienced, you want to be on like the team that takes the bad guys down. Like that's where you want to be. And I was like, yeah, absolutely.
That movie, with Benicio del Toro down.
Sicario. Yeah. Exactly. Like I had watched way too many movies, and I'm thinking U.S. Marshals is for me. And the guy was like, listen, kid, I love your intensity, your resume, your letter of recommendation, it all checks out. but here's the job. Here's what you're going to be doing. And I love the fact that he was so blunt and so honest with me. He's like, 4 years in, you're going to want to shoot yourself in the face because you are going to be so disappointed that people are promoting past you who are younger. You are way more experienced with weapons, with combat, this kind of job. You are going to be better, but because the way the job is set up, you're not going to advance. And he's like, and also, you're dealing with the worst of the worst on a daily basis. And he was just great that he could kind of see that where I was currently and my characteristics, my attitude, my personality. He's like, he just did me a great service by kind of talking me out of it. Because, I chased different, and it taught me to kind of research a little bit better and also kind of really, again, be honest with myself and figure out who I am on a personality basis. And I wanted to mention this too. We both, all three, talked about, we took a personality test and how this personality test can be so revealing in teaching you how to kind of understand who you are, what makes you tick. And, you might even look into, there's a ton of programs that are available for veterans, but you may have to pay for it. Some might be free, but like finding a mentor, finding someone who has already done all these things and has, like, I had a opportunity where I could have a mentor do this for me, and it was through a charitable organization for veterans. And I took this personality test, and they were great. They asked me so many questions. I filled out all these answers, and at the end, they gave me this whole presentation packet that said, your personality type is this. These are the jobs based on your personality that would be best for you. And then from there, they said, hey, do any of these click with you? And then you can start picking from that list and saying, oh yeah, that was a great idea. I never even considered that. And then they teach you, now let's research that position a little bit. Is that available in the city that you want to live in? And, really break it down on all the different levels and really like dive in deep and learn about the career path that you might be interested in, and then figure out what it would take to actually, do you need a college degree? Do you need more experience? Who are you going to be competing against as far as applications? What's your salary cap? What are you making? You need to do a lot of research when you're talking about your livelihood in your career, what you're going to be clocking in and day out and doing for a living. If you look at your life, how much time do you spend at your job? A lot. A big percentage of your life is spent at your work. And if you don't love it, or if you don't really feel fulfilled by doing it, man, I would really encourage you to question what path and choice you made and maybe consider a change.
Absolutely.
So we had a couple different resources that we wanted to talk about. So you had used the GI Bill after you got out. Do you want to talk a little bit about the process and how that worked out well for you?
So sure. I ended up getting an associate's through using the GI Bill, which was nice. I learned a valuable lesson while getting the GI Bill, because there was a point where I signed up for the post 9/11 aspect, which was supposed to give you a bachelor's degree, up to a bachelor's degree. And I started working full time. And it became very difficult to juggle school and a full-time police job at the same time. And I finished my classes, I did that, I got those credits, but then I had to drop out of the program and try to come back at a later date. Well, of course, the government, they'll give you the money, no problem, but if you didn't use it, they'll take it away, no problem.
Yeah.
And I ended up having to pay that back over a span of a year, which was kind of demoralizing, because it's like I had no bachelor's degree to show for it.
So I never used the GI Bill, but what you're saying basically is you agreed to complete a specific...
in a specific amount of time.
And if you don't complete it, then they withdraw that funding,
right,
and you are responsible for it.
Right, you are, and that's the thing. No matter what schooling you go to, don't go wasting it.
Yeah.
Don't go to college just to drink and waste it. Because take the time, take that discipline that you learned in the military, and put that towards school. I'll tell you right now, before the military, for me, schooling wasn't even an option. And there was no way I would have survived going through college classes and being able to sit down and try to do that until you started having some discipline. But when you're doing everybody's like, oh, you can study from home. That's so easy, right? That's so cool. That takes a lot of self-discipline all by yourself, right?
I would say that's nearly.
Yeah, I've tried the work from home option, and we're like, there's no working from home. You're popping in the game in the PlayStation or doing whatever it is. Like 5 minutes later, you're like, man, you know what? I'm gonna sleep in a little bit. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think forcing yourself to be in a position where you kind of have a little bit higher level of expectation of yourself to perform the minimum requirements, you know, like showing up and working in an office or going to a classroom where they're gonna be somebody there that's actually requiring a little bit more than the bare minimum from you.
And with me with the VA, you know, like doing the GI Bill from home, man, do you have some keyboard warriors like out there? Because think about it, you're going to college with everybody, not just military people, and it would be some kind of, you know, political aspect that would come up or your opinion. And that's where you start to learn that, you know, everybody's got opinions.
Especially in today's world.
Right?
Yeah, oh yeah, opinions.
And some people won't ever understand what we're doing. I mean, our audience, I'm hoping a lot of the people listening are Marines and service members that understand this and can get this. But, you know, they're not everybody's going to understand what we went through or what we done or how we got there, even if we didn't go into combat. You know what I mean? And I found that very challenging for me and very frustrating.
Yeah.
But I got through it, got my credits, and then it helped propel my career, right?
So what kind of advice would you give to somebody, like let's say you're going to college and you're, you know, a combat veteran or just separated from the military, and you're in the classroom for a couple weeks, a month, whatever, and all of a sudden you start running into what you were just talking about. You're realizing that like you are the only one there that served. You are the only one that voted for this guy or that guy. You are the only one that believes in this amendment or that amendment. I'm trying to be like very politically neutral here, but you get what I'm going at. Or, you know, you start seeing just that there are some massive differences between your experiences and their experiences, and you start getting really frustrated with other people. Yep. What advice would you give to people in that moment where you're like, holy cow, like you realize like these are not my people?
Remember this, right? There's all types of walks of life that make the world go round. And not everybody signed a dotted line. Most people that go in the military, I mean, we're all kind of like-minded for the most part. Right?
Yeah.
But you got to respect and understand what you signed on the dotted line to go do and defend, that you're giving these people the opportunity to have their opinion, and that they don't know that. So guess what? Respect it.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest advice I can give. Respect it. You hold true to your values, you know, and you say what you believe, but you don't need to shit on somebody for it.
You can't. You're right. You can't.
And even if it's off the wall, and you think it's the most off the wall thing, right? Like you know, don't look at it like that, and look at it going, hey, okay, you know, maybe what I'll say will help educate that person and help them believe, or maybe something they said might help you see something different too.
Yeah.
Have an open mind. I guess that's those are the biggest advices I can give you dealing with an actual college. There's a lot of great military colleges out there like AIU. What is it? I know SNU's pretty big with the military. Phoenix, University of Phoenix. There's a lot of online colleges out there that help people transition, and I think it's important because not every job in the military is transitional to civilian life either, and you got to know that. Being a grunt and going out and shooting bad guys, that's a tough job to take and bring into Fidelity Insurance
or Kinko's.
Kinko's, things like that. So
one of the things that I wanted to talk about when you were just talking about like the respecting other people's views and personalities and world and experiences and stuff, and I got out of the military. I was from the Midwest, and then chased a girl out to the East Coast and lived in the Boston area for a while, and I tell you about a culture shock and having to learn how to conform, or not even conform, but because I wasn't going to change who I was, but kind of adapt to the environment and learn how to commingle with people that were very different, worldview-wise, personality-wise, culture, upbringing, all that stuff was just very, very different for me, a very big culture shock. And it's amazing how if you don't want to lose who you are and adapt to adapt to what everybody else is doing, but you also don't want to come across as your mentality is right and their mentality is wrong, because that doesn't get you anywhere, and it kind of like creates this animosity and resentment towards the people in your environment. And I think you're going to get a lot farther in life. When I started to realize that I needed to be not so much tolerant in the fact that I was lowering my standards. I can have my standards, but those standards apply to myself. They don't need to apply to everyone around me, because all you're doing is you're setting everyone else up for failure. Because what if they had the same mentality of you and they had their standards and they were going to come and tell you like, well, this is the way I believe things should be. And if you're not meeting my expectations, then you're less than me or whatever. But I think it's important to value your beliefs, be assertive, and continue to be who you are, but don't expect other people to be like you, and kind of embrace the fact that you stand out a little bit, and look at it as like a positive thing. Because if you are the only person in the classroom who's a combat veteran, obviously other people are going to take notice of that. And if you take kind of that responsibility or that mindset of is like, hey, you know what? Instead of coming out and being like the angry, disgruntled combat veteran who looks down on people and, like lets them have it when they're, out of place, but says, you know what, I'm going to be an ambassador for the combat veteran community. I'm going to highlight all of the positive things about being a combat veteran, being a Marine, saying, we believe that honor, courage, commitment, those kinds of character qualities are what we hold true, and just focus on that kind of stuff, and then let other people be who they are and not worry so much about what other people are doing. I think that allows you to, it just takes a weight off. You're like, okay, you know what? These people are going to do what they're going to do. And I don't have to be like them. I don't have to expect them to be like me, and I can just focus on me.
You know what that is?
Yeah.
It's leadership. I mean, it is 101, right?
Yeah.
If you're a good leader, look at all the good leaders before us, right? They listen to their people, right? They listen to people. They listen to good ideas, bad ideas, and then they make a decision. That's not much different than what we're dealing with now, right?
Right.
And that's something you gotta keep in it. I mean, you guys did Voc training, right?
Yeah, so Voc Rehab was an opportunity available through the VA, and that was separate from the GI Bill. And I knew that when I got out, college was not necessarily the path for me. I was more interested in, choosing a path of like video production, getting into like a trade. And I suffered a traumatic brain injury when I was in Iraq, and I had did well on like the ASVAB score, cognitive score type stuff, and I still retained that kind of stuff mentally, but the traumatic brain injury to me was more like the remembering, focus. It was like ADD times 100. And so sitting in a classroom and being lectured or read, like I couldn't read a book. I couldn't sit there and get from one page to the next and retain anything. I would sit there and read the same paragraph like 10 times in a row and then just be like, screw it, and throw the book at the wall, because like I would get so frustrated that I couldn't do it. But I knew that creativity was something that I was really interested in, and I had, my dad was in video production already, and he had some contacts that were available, and so he helped me get into sports television, and I worked for ESPN, NBC, Comcast, Nesson, all these different, Golf Channel, NFL Network, all these different companies as a contractor. And it was great because I was able to pick and choose and work as a contractor. So my schedule was my own, and I played to my strengths. And I worked in an area where, I knew that having to sit in a cubicle 9 to 5 or report to a job that was a regular scheduled job, have a boss that could, have set expectations, just was not in my wheelhouse. I knew that if I tried that, I would be set up for failure. So I explored an area where I could kind of adapt and not have to worry about the areas that I was struggling in, but play to my strengths. And then, so the VA had this program called the Voc Rehab program. And basically what it was you say, hey, you go to talk to the counselor and you say, I am interested in this trade. And the cool thing about the counselor that I met, who later transitioned out of that role, and we became friends, and he's a great dude, and we hang out and talk a lot, and eventually hopefully I'll have him on the podcast. But he was so good and so encouraging to me. He said, just tell me what it is you want to do, and then I'll help you tailor a program that fits your needs perfectly. And so I said, hey, I'm interested in kind of starting my own video production company. Like, I just love cameras, I love shooting, I love lighting, audio, all this stuff. Like, this is like what I want to do. And he's like, cool. So he had me write up basically like a business plan, and I found some online courses, and the VA bought me a camera, lights, some software, a computer, and set me up. And I had to do a lot of legwork, and it was a 6-month process before I got approved.
That you have to, like, it takes a process, like going.
I had to complete the steps. Yes, it was not handed to me. I didn't just say, hey, to the counselor, this is what I'd like to do. This is what I'm dreaming about. And then they did all the work for me. No, the Carl, the guy who did it, the counselor, he was like, hey, I have 100 other veterans with applications that come across my desk. And the guys who put in the effort, or girls who put in the effort, are the ones who are going to get to the top of my list, because I can't physically do the effort for you. You need to do it. You need to show me, A, that this is what you actually want to do before I approve this funding. And B, I can't do it for you. I just can't. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want to be. I'm not going to go research the career path for you. That's your job, to research it, figure it out. So I did all the work, and it was hard. It was frustrating. I had to be very patient. But I knew that at the end of the path was something great. So I did everything that was expected of me, and I got my first video camera and my first tripod and lights and some microphones, and I started out, and it was not an easy path. I didn't just jump right into doing business, and like next thing I know, I have clients coming out my ears. I had to start doing work for free. I had to just go out and ask.
You had to put your own effort into it.
I love your face light up. You're like, whoa.
This is an interesting concept. Wait a minute. So you had to put.
I actually, so I knew that you could make money shooting weddings, and so I had.
So you shot up a wedding?
I shot up a wedding.
Jeez,
yes,
man.
My wife's friend was getting married, so I offered to shoot their wedding for free, because I knew that I couldn't just say, hey, I shoot weddings, without proof of actually having shot a wedding.
With a video camera.
So like in the interview, you couldn't go in there looking like a badass.
I couldn't, yes.
Like this boasted interview,
right,
thinking you know all the stuff. Okay.
Right. So I put in the effort. I put in the sweat equity, and I created a demo reel, and I started, and then I quickly learned shooting weddings was not for me. I am not a wedding videographer. That is like the farthest thing from what I wanted to do. But I liked, and actually one of the bigger contracts that I got right off the bat, after shooting a bunch of free footage, anything I could find, I would shoot, and I would edit, and I would make little videos, and I'd put together a little demo reel. And then somehow I met this company that manufactured parts for AR-15s and other weapons and AK-47s, and I somehow got into this guy's office, the owner of the company, and I was like, hey, here's my little video reel. And he's like, dude, that would be awesome. Like, let's try you out. And I was so excited. So then I just went in and I researched everything about their company, and I was like, how could I make a video for these guys?
Wait a minute, you researched their company before?
Yeah, yeah. I learned about my client's company, and I don't wanted to give them
See, I didn't make
a
this-
video that. Basically, my attitude was, if you're going to hire me to give you something, and what I was giving you was a video, I wanted that video to in turn provide something for you, so that you saw that this video brought new clients to your website and made more money, and then you said, hey, that worked great, I'm going to hire you again. And so that's what I did. And I took, we had a YouTube channel that we created, and they started with nothing, and we built this YouTube channel up to like, I think it was like 500,000 views over 2 years, and it was great. And they saw the value, and they hired, and I worked for them for like 2 years, and then I moved on and did other things. And it was what I'm talking about is the path of entrepreneurship, and this isn't something that is for everybody. If you're not an entrepreneur, if that's not what you want, then you need to figure out a different path. But for someone who's an entrepreneur, you're gonna have to start from the ground up, and you're gonna have to put in a ton of effort before you start seeing the pay or the results. But I think that is probably true with any.
It's
career.
true with like even my career, right? I'm not a lieutenant just because I woke up one day. Okay, I'm a lieutenant.
Yeah.
Guess what I had to do? I had to put a lot of time in on my own time.
Right.
And not get paid. When you want to like go SWAT or you want to go any like of those cool gigs, guess what you're doing?
Yeah.
You're out there role playing for them.
Yeah.
You're doing different things with them to get to learn the trade. So when you go to those interviews, you can say, hey, this is what I've done in my time to help become a member of this team.
Yeah, one of the things that my dad told me that my grandpa told my dad when he was young was, if let's say you're in a pool of employees and you're doing what you're told, you're doing the bare minimum, then you're going to be recognized as the guy who does what he's told and does the bare minimum. But so my grandpa told my dad to, if you are seeing that you have downtime, do something to show that you are useful. Like observe what other people are doing and present yourself as an employee who is useful. And so my dad was, he was going to college, and he had this side job. He was working for a mechanic, and there was 2 college students working for this mechanic. And there was some downtime during the day, and my dad sat there, and he realized like there was nothing really left to do. So he saw a broom sitting there, he grabbed the broom and he started sweeping the floor. He's like, if I can't stock the shelves, if I can't fix a car, if I can't do something that I'm here to do, I'm going to at least make myself useful. So he swept the floor, and he didn't do it to like be seen doing it. He just knew that was like the right thing to do. Well, the supervisor saw him sweeping the floor, and I think we can all see where the story's headed. But at the end of that college term, or they were going back to school, the mechanic, the supervisor told my dad, he's like, hey, if you'd like to stay and continue working, we'd love to have you. And they let the other kid go. And the other kid didn't do a bad job. He was equally as skilled as my dad was. They were both college students. They didn't have like a ton of experience. But my dad showed the character quality of when there can be something that you could do, and you can provide some more than just the bare minimum. And if someone above you sees that character quality, you're going to be set apart from the rest of the population. And I think that's where you start to see, you start to advance and you start rising to the top. And I can imagine if you're a lieutenant, you see 2 officers, and you got one dude who's taking just the bare minimum shifts, but you got another officer who says, hey, I noticed that today is a unique day because we have, a police or a funeral, or we've got a pile up on the highway, and I thought you guys might need some help. I'm just here to help. And you're like, yes, you're my guy. Get out there. And then, he's going to be the one you're going to select when it comes for promotion. I would expect, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going back, being self-aware, noticing the patterns, and then, just being able to kind of predict what's going to happen at the workplace, or, any sort of events or any any upcoming, issues or being.
It's just it's an attitude thing. It's like I think so many people get in the mentality of I'm here to get a paycheck.
Clock in, clock out.
Yeah, if that's what you want, then by all means do it. But I don't think you can show up, clock in, clock out, and then be surprised when your supervisors see you as the clock in, clock out guy, and you're wondering why I'm not getting promoted or why I'm not getting selected for another position. Like, because you didn't present yourself in a light of being promotable.
Yeah, you gotta be uncomfortable doing other jobs other than just the trade that you are, right? I mean, if something needs, like your dad, having to sweep the floor, right? That's not a mechanic's job generally, you know what I mean? Or like in law enforcement, right? Everybody thinks we get in the cruiser, but sometimes it might be just taking out a trash bag
I think there's
cleaning
more,
something up that's a mess, right?
Yeah.
Being former Marines, I think, or former military in general, I think those employees are the ones that have more initiative, from what I see too.
Close all three everything's for a reason.
And if you were in the Marine Corps, chances are you are a expert with a mop.
And you painted a rock.
Yes.
Oh my God, I've given
went up
and
and down a
taken
highway.
so many classes.
And
in
I
mop.
can pick up
Trash
cigarette
collector.
butts like no one else.
So can I.
I had to mop
I don't
up
even
snow
smoke.
once. It
Was that-
snowed in North Carolina, and I had to mop it up.
You had to mop snow?
We also had to sweep, push broom, rain. Puddle. I don't know why.
Well, that might be because you were getting messed with, but
Probably.
I had to.
You
I
should
had to
like
pay for
reflect a little bit on why you had to do those things.
it. I had to paint curbs and rocks for the battalion area. Everybody thinks that when you go on a base, you're just like, wow, it's so nice, it's so well kept. They must just have people. Yeah, that's all of us.
Yeah.
out there.
There
on
are
camp,
people doing
on
that.
Camp Guard.
They're called privates and recruits.
Right.
Oh my God,
Going up and
that
down
too.
the highway and picking up trash and hey, that needs to be painted. Go over there. So I used to laugh because it's not my job was.
I think it's ironic when you think about how if you've ever watched like some of these shows like Undercover Boss or these different people who talk about how they got to a leadership position. Mm-hmm. People who are in elevated positions didn't get there because when you see like it's classic. You see a corporal or a sergeant or whatever when it comes time to like duty. The corporals aren't like, why doesn't corporal have duty? Or that kind of stuff. But he did. He did all of that, and now he's in a leadership position, and there's a reason he's a corporal or a sergeant or a staff NCO, and he's done his time. And the same thing with, you show up and you're like, well, why isn't my boss doing this? I'm like, he did do that, and now he's in a leadership position. And if you want that higher role, you need to do the grunt level work. Just don't ever be above some of that hard work. Like I think if you do the hard work, you do the stuff that needs to be done, you take initiative, that's where you're going to shine and be.
Just have that volunteer for working party mentality. So you get out of the harder ones later on.
It makes things a lot easier. I'll tell
Well,
you.
we were just talking about this like an hour ago. You're talking about the reverse psychology of the working party.
Yeah, it works.
Give me two Lance Corporals right now, and you're like, okay. Like, not you.
Yep, no, Trent, you can go. Yes.
But you weren't afraid, even if you got got selected,
No,
because
it's-
you volunteered.
Well, I mean,
you
it
weren't
has-
afraid
no.
to do it. That's the problem. Everybody else would go, "Oh, geez, look at the time."
Well, I mean, you know what? At a certain point, I just got fed up with people trying to hide. They're like, literally, it's like the colors sound going off. Everyone books it. When they're like, oh, there's a working party, and I'm just like, guys, you need to carry this over there.
It needs to get done.
Literally
It's going to
takes
have
30 seconds.
Yeah.
I'd reiterate, like we're not subject matter experts in any of this. We're given our, how we went through this and how we came into the jobs that we're doing now. And I'd love to hear from the audience and you guys out there that what are some things, some educational aspects you used, some interview techniques that you've used, or your take on resumes and cover letters and, or dressing, like what do you dress in, So it'd be great.
Yeah, and if you have other, would love to get like a pool of resources. If you know of charitable organizations that offer, you talked about proofreading your resume. If spelling is not your strong suit, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, have somebody else help proofread. And there are organizations that help guys who've never written a resume before. Don't be upset or embarrassed that you don't know how to write a resume if you've never done it before. Like, if someone handed me a machine gun, before I went into the Marine Corps, I shouldn't be embarrassed I don't know how to use it. Right. I earned that skill over using it over and over and over again. But same thing with writing a resume, or learning how to apply to college, or figuring out what your career path. There's so many resources out there for you, and as our audience, if you offer those resources, or if you know of a good resource, put those things in the comment section, and let other people know. Help each other out, because we should all be looking out for each other and helping each other up, and be excited and happy for each other when we see one of our fellow Marines or veterans doing well. It should make each other happy when we see someone doing better. If you got nothing else to add, I think that will wrap up this episode 5 Outside the Wire. Appreciate you watching or listening, and we'll see you next time.
And don't wear your alphas to your interview. You're not checking in.
That's never fine.
Mayhem, this is Bravo 67 QRF. We are moving to contact exit gate 2. We are Oscar Mike.